Mother and her child were peacefully napping during the afternoon. But suddenly, they heard the sound of the door opening. Thinking it was her husband returning home, the mother looked up and saw a stranger standing before them. The man proceeded to tie up the mother and child, using a sharp weapon to chop off the woman's finger, while also forcing her to sing children's songs. If she could finish the song before dying, the man would spare her son's life. Sadly, the woman took her last breath before completing the song. To make matters worse, the man didn't leave the crime scene after the assault. Instead, he stripped naked and waited for the homeowner to return. But what he didn't expect was that this time he calculated wrong. The homeowner was the most famous detective, Kim Do-sok. Witnessing the scene, Kim Do-sok rushed to the crime scene, ignoring the objections of his colleagues, and put an end to the twisted killer's rampage. But he didn't get his wish. Finally, he was stopped by his colleagues' gunfire. Not only did he lose his job, but his legs were also crippled by his bespectacled co-workers' beating. The serial killer who had murdered 27 people, Kim Shin, was finally caught. It was supposed to be a moving scene, and reporters swarmed in like bees to interview him. However, when asked why he did not spare even young children, the murderer's response shocked everyone present. Shouldn't people who live under one roof be complete and harmonious with each other? A simple sentence without regret made those present at the scene angry. They cursed and complained everywhere, demanding Kim Shin's immediate execution. But at that moment, Kim Shin was completely oblivious and still had a smile on his face. In court, the judges also considered this case to be of great importance, and it was determined to be the worst murder case in South Korea. Finally, the murderer, Kim Shin, was sentenced to death. It seems that the incident was explained to the families of the victims and the public. But most people did not know that, since 1997, South Korea has never really carried out any executions, at most only sentencing prisoners to life imprisonment. As an elderly detective, the bespectacled one knew this was an inhumane act, but the boy next to him was the only survivor of the serial killings. And to prevent Ji-hoo from living in hatred, the bespectacled detective chose to hide this truth. But as everyone knows, everything Ji-hoo had gone through had left a haunting image in his heart that couldn't be erased. Then he witnessed the scene of his father's death, which had a significant impact on Ji-hoo's psychology during his teenage years. His psyche became increasingly twisted, and he became extremely sensitive to the evil things around him. He played with small friends to the point where there was no turning back. Old enough to be bullied and extorted at school, he was always worrying about everything. Originally a little wicked and strong, the principle of severe punishment for major evils, Ji-hoo pushed a classmate who bullied honest people down the stairs, causing severe injuries to the person. He also went to the home of the perpetrator, who caught and poked a hole in the gas pipe, so that the evil person was engulfed in flames when smoking a cigarette. At this time, Ji-hoo's face was expressionless as he calmly watched. He sought revenge on all the evil people in a way they deserved. But he thought everything had been done perfectly, and no one could trace that it was him who did it. Then a mysterious man appeared beside him, and turned his head and smiled, saying to him, "This fire was truly meaningful. You agree, don't you, Ji-hoo?" The man was tied up on a barbed wire and electrified, one side enduring the ruthless shock of 100,000 volts, while the other side was humming the song that his son liked to hear. The twisted killer, Kim Shin, touched Ji-hoo's head like a perverse demon. Then on the face were the tears of the devil. "I truly admire you. There's someone who loves you as a father." He finished singing the nursery rhyme you like the most. "You can go now." Ji-hoo saw his father struggling to breathe. Extreme sadness and fear woke him up from his dream. For 10 years, he has been dreaming of the scene where his father died. But every time he dreams, it still startles him. Since his father was murdered by Kim Shin, Ji-hoo went to an orphanage, where the headmaster is his uncle, who wears glasses and is retired. Perhaps it is a feeling of guilt for hiding the truth from Ji-hoo. For 10 years, his uncle has taken care of Ji-hoo, hoping that one day Ji-hoo can overcome the terrible trauma and move on. But what was supposed to be a happy scene was interrupted by an untimely message. Today, an expert in the field revealed shocking information. 10 years ago, with extremely perverse means, Kim Shin cruelly killed 28 people, originally sentenced to death 10 years ago. But now the murderer Kim Shin is living comfortably in prison. The person who reported him was Kim Shin's former cellmate, has now been released. Our reporter has also interviewed people involved in the case. In order to not bring back traumatic memories for Ji-hoo. His room neighbor, Tai-shi hurriedly turned off the TV. The bespectacled uncle also comforted Ji-hoo with his attention. However, Ji-hoo seemed indifferent instead. Perhaps the flames of revenge within him were raging. He was also thinking about his next target to vent his anger. On the other hand, 3 college students with frowning faces secretly bought cigarettes for the gang leader. After receiving the cigarettes, the gang leader kindly educated these delinquent youths. He acted like a positive role model, encouraging them to turn over a new leaf. In reality, they used violence to coerce weaker students. He even filmed himself promoting positive energy, and the videos of his positive messages online received a lot of likes and attention. If any students behaved poorly, they would receive a slap as a reward. The man who was considered the gang leader's name was Park Sun-doo, 23 years old. 2 years ago, he was a notorious thug. If he didn't like someone's look, he would slap them in the face, considering it a reward for himself. The man accidentally blocked his way, and Park Sun-doo, a physically strong man since childhood, brutally beat him. At that time, the man lost consciousness. However, Park Sun-doo did not give up. In the end, the man lay there, beaten to a pulp. But because Park Sun-doo was still young at the time, he was only sentenced to 2 years of juvenile rehabilitation. After serving his sentence, he used his life in prison as material, transforming into a live streaming personality, #1 in short videos. Every day, he tells his audience interesting stories about prison life. Thanks to this, he has received a lot of attention. Such a despicable person can still make money. I saw it and got angry. And Park Sun-doo, who is now making a lot of money to become more famous, actively revealed that the notorious murderer Kim Shin is still alive. Perhaps because of this move, he sent himself to the underground world's dead end. Originally, Park Sun-doo wanted to go home, but suddenly discovered that the car door was scratched by someone. Just as he sat down and lamented the car, Ji-hoo slowly walked behind him with a hammer in his hand. Ji-hoo didn't hesitate. He took a deep breath with a hammer in his hand. After a loud bang, Park Sun-doo was lying on the ground. If it were an ordinary person hit in the back of the head like this, they would either die or be disabled. But looking at Ji-hoo's hammer position, he seemed unsatisfied. The hammer was lifted up again, but unexpectedly, this time it hit the air. Park Sun-doo managed to avoid the blow thanks to his extraordinary physical ability. Then he gritted his teeth and asked who he was. But Ji-hoo didn't answer and continued to lift the hammer to strike. Unexpectedly, Park Sun-doo used his physical advantage to knock him down. Faced with physical oppression, Ji-hoo had no chance of winning. A light punch landed on Ji-hoo's face like a cat scratch. And as a reward for his audacity, Park Sun-doo responded with a strong punch. With each strong punch, Ji-hoo's consciousness became increasingly blurred. His life was almost at its end. But at this moment, the mysterious figure he had met before appeared again. A pair of large, wrinkled hands grabbed Park Sun-doo's pants. The other hand tightens around the neck. Even though the opponent has a physical advantage, at this moment, he is still locked in. The mysterious man complains about Ji-hoo's weak punches with a relaxed face, and teaches Ji-hoo how to deal with body pressure. He immediately uses his hand to exert force, causing Park Sun-doo's pants to explode. At this point, Park Sun-doo is so moved that he can only scream in pain. Then the mysterious man locks the opponent's head, making them immediately unable to scream, no matter how big the opponent's head is. As long as the artery scene is locked for no more than 3 seconds, the whole body will lose all strength and gradually faint. The mysterious man's consecutive movements make Ji-hoo stare blankly in place. The mysterious man continues to speak. As long as this technique is used, any man, woman, elderly person, even children, will die. Without exception, even if they are monsters or demons who kill people, they will all have to die. The parents of the boy were killed by a perverted demon, but the court only sentenced him to life imprisonment for revenge. The pain of losing parents and the inaction of law enforcement agencies gradually distorts Ji-hoo's psychology. If the people in this world do not take action, then let him balance the scales of justice himself, using his own way to punish those heinous criminals. But everything backfires. Ji-hoo, fundamentally weak, is no match for the villain. Fortunately, a mysterious person came to his aid, and led him to an abandoned hiding place. There, this person revealed their entire plan, and wanted to train Ji-hoo into a warrior. After that, they went into the prison to eliminate Kim Shin, who was still heartless even in captivity. Those who insulted him had no good intentions. Even when facing numerous besiegers, he could still handle his job well. On one hand, he smiled and said he wouldn't kill anyone. On the other hand, he cruelly twisted the arm of the person in front of him. Facing a murderer of this level, the crowd could only stand still in fear and apprehension. They were afraid of being taught to become monsters without humanity. However, at this moment, a sound caught Kim Shin's attention. What's the point of bullying a small person? Let him go, and I'll play with you. One of his subordinates tried to stop him, but it was futile. Only a tall man with a 2-meter height and a strong and slow-moving figure was seen speaking. I have lived with beasts and done all sorts of evil things. But people like you have no humanity. I am seeing this for the first time. Kim Shin smiled and said, "What do you want to play with me?" Before finishing his sentence, the tall man punched Kim Shin in the face. But Kim Shin relied on his flexible reaction and his back to slow the impact of the punch, swiftly turning the situation around in an instant. Not only were the big man's fingers broken, his wrists were also locked tightly by Kim Shin. He couldn't help but grunt like a pig. Kim Shin seized this distance. holding the upper and lower jaw of the big man with both hands. Then behaving like a demon and slowly saying, "When I speak, please don't interrupt me." Then he wanted to tear the big man's mouth apart. On one side, Kim Shin's subordinates saw him unarmed, but they couldn't do much about it. One after another they rushed forward, fighting to the death. But Kim Shin's reaction speed was really fast, leaning to one side to dodge the attack, and retaliating with a punch to the jaw. One of his subordinates ended up with a dislocated head. Then his body flew up into the air, and another was hit on the top of his head with a punch. After adjusting himself, Kim Shin discovered the last remaining subordinate rushing towards him. Using the force of the collision, he directly stabbed his finger into the opponent's body. Then he stroked and whispered into the opponent's ear, telling a story. "When I was little, some kids called me a monster, but I couldn't fight back. But later I found out. I have fingers, and they have vital points." Then the last opponent also fell to the ground, and laughter echoed in the room. Only one man was seen holding a dog in his arms, laughing and saying, "You did well, Kim Shin, not bad." But Kim Shin smiled back and replied, "Not difficult, very interesting."